we'll go back to Google real quick, and I'll show you how to find the next one. This one, oops, no thanks. So this one here, we'll do EPA Waters Geoviewer and hit enter. And it's going to be make sure it says the Waters Geoviewer, not just all the other various things that might be tutorials and all the other things. So I'm going to show you here. We'll click on the little map, the little image here that takes us to the application. And I'll go back to Fairplay, Colorado, because we were just there. This is updated recently as well. So that's why this splash screen shows up. That means it's updated. So I don't know what they've changed, but something is updated here. So I'll zoom out. It starts in Washington, D.C. That's where the EPA is based. So we'll zoom out, and then I'll just pan over, use my mouse to drag it over here. There's Kansas. Here's Colorado. So we'll look down in here in the high plains. There's 285. There's Fairplay. And again, we were working in this area north of town here. So let me kind of delineate that for us again. We were working in this kind of property right in here, if you remember. That's where we were working. So what we're trying to determine with this one is what we think about is their chain of custody. So if you're in the doctor's office and you have a blood sample, for example, you're going to go get your blood sampled for get it to the lab to test for whatever, cholesterol or whatever. So the main idea is on the vial that they collect your blood, it says we collected it from this patient at this time on this date at this doctor's office, clinic, whatever. And then it goes into the refrigerator or whatever, the place where they store it. And then the laboratory has a courier, and they'll say, we picked up all the samples from the lab at this time, at this location. And then we got it to the lab at this time, at this location. And then I pulled this sample out of the refrigerator to begin working on it by this technician, this date, this time, et cetera. So it's a chain of custody, right? So we need to also understand how the water is leaving our site and where it's traveling, and that's part of our chain of custody of the runoff coming from our site. So that's why we have to determine from our site here, where is the water going into, and then where is it traveling? So the endpoints that we need to determine would be one of the major waters like the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic, the Pacific, one of the Great Lakes, and then either a Canadian border or the Mexican border. And then even if you're in Utah, for example, you might even end at one of the Great Lake, or there's another Salt Lake there. I can't remember what it's called, but the Great Salt Lake, and then there's another Salt Lake that most of that area kind of drains into those two Salt Lakes there. So what we'll do is we will we'll come up here. Let me erase this here. We'll come up here to this drainage area delineation, just to make sure that all of our site drains to a point that we can measure. So I'm going to say areas delineation, and I'll put a starting point there, and then I'll fold it back up, and then I'll put the starting point right here at 285 in Beaver Creek. I have a thought that everything on our site flows into Beaver Creek because there's a stream right through there, and I'm guessing that it's going southeast bound. So once I do that, then I'll make sure that I'm showing that, and I'll say run, and then it's going to calculate for us our stream. I mean our watershed, our drainage area. So if our site, and again our site is right here, remember. So as it's calculating, we have to make sure that all of our site is draining in there. Otherwise, we could have multiple outfalls from our site, and that happens where your site this half of the property might flow to Beaver Creek, and that half of the property might flow to the middle fork of the South Platte River, or whatever the case might be. So what we're determining is just making sure that all of our site is draining into this receiving water. So that is a long watershed. I'm going to erase my drawing here. And that is telling us that from the Continental Divide, that stream, Beaver Creek, flows all the way down to here. And as a matter of fact, all of our property that we were trying to work on, that we're going to be developing or whatever, is all within this Beaver Creek watershed, which doesn't surprise me. That's pretty simple that we understand that. All right. So our first receiving water would be Beaver Creek. So once I have that information, then I will click on Beaver Creek, and it's going to tell me it's part of this delineated area. Okay. So now that I know that we're all there, I'm going to remove I'm gonna trash, and I'm going to remove the delineation. Let me see here. Output, exit, exit. All right. Now that we know for sure, then I will click on the Beaver Creek here, and it will actually bring up information. Okay. You can actually go to Watershed Report here, click on that, and it will open up a new window, and it will give us information. It will confirm the drainage area for this segment, right? So the other one showed us all the way from the Continental Divide all the way down to here, that this is where, this is all draining through here, and so our area drains. But specifically, this end of the segment to this end of the segment is Beaver Creek, this section, and they're saying that that section is 3.8 kilometers long, and that this section of land is all draining into Beaver Creek in this segment. Now, there's other, obviously, water that drains into the other sections leading up to this point, but this is all draining into this area. So we do know for a fact that our property drains into this specific segment, and you've got lots of information available here that you can utilize. There's even more additional information if you need that. You can actually click on catchment and watershed data, and it'll give you nitrogen fixation from the cultivation of crops and all sorts of stuff, loss of forest and habitat, and all sorts of great information you can have in here, right? But the point of this is to find out where the water is going. So we can trace this Beaver Creek, and then it's flowing into this stream here. So I'll click on this, and this is the middle fork of the South Platte River. So I'll zoom back out, and that middle fork of the South Platte River, and you can just, again, you can chase it down until you get to an end point. Middle fork of the South Platte River, still flowing. And so I'm just going to check and make sure that I'm following along with the middle fork of the South Platte River. It then goes into the South Platte River. South Platte River is flowing. Now these arrows are telling us the flow direction. So it's telling us that it's going through this little lake here, and then the South Platte River makes a turn to the northeast. So it's still flowing here. And if I'm not mistaken, this flows all the way up into Denver at this point. It flows up into Denver. So let me just check here. If we're still flowing, yep, South Platte River. It flows all the way up here. Yep, still flowing. And it's coming in here. Still flowing. So this is still flowing. Now we're in Littleton, Colorado, Englewood. There's Denver, right? So we're flowing through Denver, Colorado. So this stream eventually does flow through Denver, which is amazing that it kind of wraps around those mountains and flows this direction. And then it connects eventually with a river, which I believe is the North Platte. I zoomed out too much, lost it. All right, here we go. There's the South Platte River. This is still flowing over here. And I'm going to jump over here because I believe it flows. Yep, so it's over here. This is going to take us into Kansas, right? This is, Platte, Nebraska, right? Isn't that a place? South Platte River. So as we're flowing through here, and you can see all these different various streams are flowing in. You see all the arrows in here. That's because it's widened out into various numbers of different. It's flat, and it's got lots of sandbars and islands in the middle of it. So that's what all those flow arrows are indicating here. So it's still flowing eastbound. I'm not going to take up all day, but just know that it flows into Nebraska here, and then it'll drop down through Kearney, Nebraska. Let me zoom in here. It should pop up. Yeah, so it's still flowing through here. And these are all the different little, so it's into the Platte River. And then the Platte River eventually makes its way over, if I'm not mistaken, into the Missouri River. And then that makes it over into the, or let's see here. This is the stream here. It's into the Mississippi River. Yeah, to the Missouri River, then Mississippi, then Gulf of Mexico. So our chain of custody, that's what we would track. All right.